so he said, well, okay, well, let's give it a try. So,
My favorite old uncle is a naturopath down in California.
yes. So I got to go with my friends Les Griffith and Bill Mitchell and said, hey, why don't we do this? So we sat around Bill Mitchell's famous kitchen table back in April of 1978 and decided to do it. And so Les said, well, I'll teach some classes, and Bill said, well, I'll recruit some students. And I looked around and said, okay, well, I'll be president. Okay. So then I mentioned it to my receptionist the next day, who told her mother. Now, her mother was a woman who had suffered from rheumatoid arthritis and come to see me for treatment. And it was kind of interesting because I'd always thought myself as a failure because I couldn't get her off all her rheumatoid arthritis drugs. She always thought it was fantastic because I dramatically lessened her disease burden, so she was able to drop her drugs a lot. So from her perspective, I was a success. So she said, well, what a great idea. So she sent me a check for $200. And I used that $200 to create Bastyr University.
Wow.
At that time, of course, we called it John Bastyr College in Naturopathic Medicine. So the naming was also an issue. So when Les, Bill, and I were sitting around the kitchen table trying to decide what to name the school, we thought, of course, Puget Sound College in Naturopathic Medicine or Seattle College and all those kinds of things. And I don't know which one it was came up with the idea of naming it after Dr. Bastyr, our beloved teacher. So we decided to call it the John Bastyr College in Naturopathic Medicine. My job, since I was president, was to go down to meet with Dr. Bastyr and ask for his permission. He didn't give it to us. He said, no, you can't use my name. Now, I think there's kind of two reasons for him to do that. One was he was a modest man, he didn't want that. Or the other one was, who are these young guys, what are they going to do with my name? You know, it could have been either way. And being the kind, sensitive young man that I was, I said, Dr. Bastyr, we're going to name the school after you anyway because what you represent. And if you want, and the way to stop me is by getting an attorney. Now, I actually said that to him. What a terrible thing to do. What a terrible thing to do. But there's good news. Okay. So many years later, the class of '85 asked if we give Dr. Bastyr an honorary degree in the school that was named after him. So at a wealthy supporter's home in the Highlands, we gave him the honorary degree. And with tears running down his face, he said, I had always wanted this. So anyway, so I felt vindicated.
You did the right thing.
I did the right thing.
You did the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, he deserved it, and second, of course, but on the other side, he had no way of knowing whether we'd do a good job in his name or not, and we did. Yeah. You know, if I knew then what I know now, I would have realized what we did was not possible. Okay, and I can say that pretty easily because at the same time we started, 4 other naturopathic colleges started all over North America. They all failed. I mean, we're the only one who made it.
Who were the other 4?
Well, there was a school in Southern California, a school in Arizona, a school in Oregon. So, and then NCM went bankrupt. Now, they didn't fold, but they went bankrupt. I mean, this is not easy. You look at what it was like, everybody looks at natural medicine, integrated medicine now, and it's got a lot of social support. But look at what it was like back then. I mean, there was no ready source of students, no trained faculty. The most modern textbook was written the year I was born. If you saw a media story about herbal medicine, it was about some poor child who went out in the backyard and ate castor oil beans and died from it. And that's what you saw.
Public perception.
And then when I started the school and I tried to apply to foundations for funding to help start the school, well, they laughed at us. Because any foundation that supported anything with healthcare would have an MD at the head of the source of the money, so of course it wouldn't happen. In terms of licensing for naturopathic doctors, when I started the school, it was down to only 6 states now licensed naturopathic doctors, and it was a felony in 2 states. So it's hard to imagine a more challenging and difficult, dismal environment. It was, everybody was against this. Media, legislation, it was really bad. And, as Dr. Bastyr said, the truth of the medicine will out. So what I did was, I got together a board of trustees, whom I thought would be helpful to create the school, and would both in terms of knowledge base as well as willingness to lend us our support. So, for example, one of the first people I recruited was Jeff Bland, and Jeff Bland helped me write the curriculum because I wanted to do a science-based I coined the term science-based natural medicine as a way of kind of formulating that this way of thinking about patients and thinking about health, if it had validity, it had to be subjectable to scientific rigor. So I coined the term science-based natural medicine and made that the foundation of Bastyr. So when I wrote the curriculum with Jeff Bland's help. Then I recruited PhDs to teach all the basic sciences. I recruited MDs to teach the diagnostic courses, and recruited NDs, naturopathic doctors, to teach the therapeutic courses. So I thought I'd do is I'd pull the strength from each of those groups. And by doing that, we were able to create a really good college in a very short period of time.
And then you changed the public perception and you drew students.
Yes. So we somehow that first year we had 31 students show up at our doorstep.
Wow. The first class
Our
was
very
31
first
students.
class was 31 students.
Tell me how they assembled. Tell me who did you reach and how did they find you?
I give Bill Mitchell a lot of credit, and also realized that I recruited Bill Mitchell myself and Les Griffith. At that time, Les to some degree, but Bill and I to a much greater degree, we had developed a pretty strong reputation in the community as being really good doctors. And people liked the idea. They liked the idea of science-based natural medicine because they had this belief in the healing power of nature, but they realized that for it to be accepted by modern society, for us to become a part of the healthcare system, we had to do it right. We had to have accredited education. We had to do research. We had to have modern textbooks. You know, we had to do it right. And they could see that the vision that I articulated was something that really engaged people. So not only engage students, but engage faculty. I got faculty to teach for me for 1/3 what they're getting elsewhere because they believe in the vision.
Right.
It was really tough. So did you hear the story about our being closed down 1 week before it all started?
No.
You hear that story?
No,
Okay.
This is the first time I've heard the real story.
Oh, there's a lot of stories. So we had this deal with Seattle Central Community College to teach our classes, and we had set up so that students could, if they're from Washington State, could get in-state tuition and have the basic sciences taught at the community college. Now, they didn't teach the naturopathic philosophy courses, but kind of basic science they were teaching it. So 1 week before we would open classes, I'm not sure how much I should say here. An unnamed local medical school found out about it, complained to the state that the community college was teaching a course at too high a level for a community college. Okay? And the community college had to shut down our program
1 week before.
1 week before it starts. So we're thinking, oh my gosh, you know, it's all this work we've put into it, people selling their businesses and their homes, coming to here. And then something happened which was a blessing of the universe. You can look at it, call it what you may, and here's how the story goes. So the chancellor of the community college district, which there were 5 community colleges at that time, wife had been going through menopause and having a hard time of it. And she mentioned this to her girlfriend, who said, well, I went to my naturopathic doctor and he cured me of my menopausal symptoms. Why don't you go and see him as well? So she went off, his wife went off to see the naturopathic doctor, was treated, came back, and was complaining to her girlfriend a few weeks later about her menopausal symptoms. Her girlfriend said, oh, didn't the naturopathic doctor help you? And she said, well, just give me these little white pills in this little glass bottle, these homeopathic things. That can't work. So she never took them. So her girlfriend said, well, until you take the pill, the therapy, you can't complain about your menopausal symptoms. So of course she takes homeopathic remedy and clears up all her symptoms. So here we have the chancellor of community college district saying, well, wait a minute, my wife just got cured by this and the medical school is trying to shut them down, so he took our side. So we were able to work out a deal where we couldn't do it as a state-funded operation, but we did it as a contract operation. So we were able to use their facilities and their labs, their faculty and such, but pay them a really low level for it so we could make it work commercially. So it's kind of, it seems appropriate.
Yeah.
It seems appropriate that it was the truth of the medicine that gave us that first blessing in order to continue on, because we were done.
Right.
How can you do it when you have no facilities, no faculty? What do you do? So we were able to keep the school going, and then One of the first things I did, of course, was I applied for accreditation with the Northwest Association of Schools and Colleges, and they politely told me that we weren't eligible for accreditation. And like a naive young man, I just believed them. Well, the school that started in Oregon was smarter, and they got an attorney to look at their eligibility requirements and said, actually, no, they have to accept application. Well, again, the universe smiled on us, because the person who was supposed to be the head of the side visit team was the dean of a veterinary school, and was very, very appalled by the idea that natural medicine school would get accredited. So this guy was no way, no how.
Yeah.
He got sick.
Wow.
And last minute he gets sick, can't go on the side visit. So then they appointed a guy by the name of Dean Sorensen, who was the vice chancellor at the University of Utah. An older, kind man who was an academician and wasn't interested in politics. So he comes and sees us. He sees, what's he see? All these dedicated people. You know, good students, properly qualified faculty. Our self-study was really honest. We said, well, here's our strengths, but we have these real weaknesses. Here's how we're going to fix it. Very honest self-study. He loved us. And so we got a pre-accredited status.
Wow.
Now,
What year was that?
right?
What year was that?
It was 1985. Okay. So, I'm sorry, it's 83 we got the pre-accredited status. Okay. So, at the meeting in which we got the pre-accredited status, they appointed a committee to reconsider their eligibility standards. And they just so happened to be that they appointed the retired dean of the University of Washington School of Medicine to head the committee to reconsider the eligibility standards. When I heard about that, I said, oh my God. So as expected, they came back with these new standards for, you know, what schools can apply to them for accreditation. And they said it was not aimed at us, they were just updating their accreditation standards. Well, out of the 105 schools that they were either accredited or pre-accredited status, it only affected 3 schools. Okay, Bastyr, a freestanding school of psychology that merged with another college, and a school which was a branch of a college of university from another state, and they got their accreditation through the other main campus. So we end up calling it the Bastyr rule because it only applied to us. So in '85, they sent out the site visit team, which this time had that dean of the veterinary school as the head of it, and lo and behold, they decided we didn't meet their eligibility standards. But they made a big mistake, because they still evaluate us for academics. So on the one hand, the report said, this school has good academics, and they've improved since last time, but unfortunately, they no longer meet the eligibility standards, so they should lose their accreditation, the pre-accreditation standard. So they pulled our accreditation, we appealed, and they just blew us off. At that point, we realized that this was a political issue, not an academic issue, and we then took a political approach to it. We got an editorial in the PI at that point, again chastising them. And of course, this is an accrediting agency which is used to, you know, being behind the scenes. Also, to get all this public media, and it's all bad. And then we get a letter from Booth Gardner, governor of the state of Washington, chastising them as well. So then we go back to negotiating tables, and we say, okay, this new rule you've passed says they will not accredit freestanding single-purpose institutions. And so we said, well, by the way, we are now going to have a Master's of Science in Nutrition. Yeah. Okay, so now we have 2 programs. We're not single purpose. Right. Okay, and they let us do it. There's kind of a way where they can save face, and we could stay in the process. So they let us stay in. So then eventually we got our full accreditation in 1989. And what was interesting in the 90s was that they then took great pride in being the first accrediting agency to accredit a school of natural medicine and bring them up, help them come up to modern standards of education. So it went from adversarial relationship to one which was really kind of a mutual respect. So it was. I think the truth of the medicine is the healing power within each individual patient, and that our job is to understand what the patient needs to fully manifest their health. And this whole idea of nature cure is actually really valid. Not some kind of woo-woo, strange kind of concept. It's basically about living healthfully. There's no substitute for a whole foods diet. There's no substitute for physical activity. There's no substitute for a loving family relationship. There's no substitute for positive mental attitude. There's no substitute for avoiding toxins and getting them out of the body. I mean, these are the foundational pieces that have to be addressed if the patient's going to be healthy. Now, having said that, we also need to be really sophisticated in our understanding of biochemical uniqueness, because indeed each of our bodies is made differently, and while a foundational nature cure is required for health, it's not always going to be enough for health. We need to be able to understand the extra little bit the patient's going to need and be smart enough to give it to them. Now notice, not once in there did I say anything about disease. Disease is obfuscating. Doesn't mean we ignore disease, but we shouldn't let disease define how we think about our patients. So when Peter heard that I was going to go to naturopathic college, which he did not like at all.
I know, I had a discussion with him.
Yes, well, he was on the admissions committee at University of Washington Medical School. He said, well, if you want to become a doctor, I'll get you into UW. And I really struggled with that one. You know, it would have been much easier to go the MD route, but as I looked at it, I decided it wasn't what I wanted to study. Mm-hmm. So, but life would have been quite different if I had gone that way.
The whole world would have been different.
There's two things that allowed me to transcend that very difficult family situation. One was I was really smart, and I got accolades, as you said, for being really smart. And also I had the good fortune in college to date a girl who had a mother who was a saint. Wow. And this mother rescued me. She really did. She
loved you.
She loved me.
Yeah.
She did. Her daughter loved me. I wasn't smart enough to really appreciate it, but her mother was a special person. So this woman who was very bright, who was a first grade teacher, and she had the ability to look at a person and see in them what they could be. And then she'd have these very subtle ways of nurturing that.